We're here to say hello. Alright, she wants to stay here, so welcome to the video. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Cameron. It's lovely to have you here. I'm always excited to film these. It's a quarter of the way through the year. I know. It's a quarter of the way through the year, which is very exciting. Also, what the heck is going on? But, as always on this channel, it's also the end of another month. So today, we're going over my March reads. My cat just opened the door. She's hungry. This is the first video I've ever recorded in the evening, so she is very much like, I need to be fed right now or I'm gonna die. I know. Let's go over some stats. After I tell you some exciting news, I get to check one of my 10 yearly goals off. That's the section right up here. I don't know if you guys can even read that. But I get to check one of those goals off because I have officially read more non-novels this year than I did last year. Because I read a lot of graphic novels. Now, when I say non-novels, I just mean like not 300-page all words storyline novels. So that can include essays and poetry and graphic novels. So I get to check that off the box because I read like 4 graphic novels this month, which is super fun. The camera can see you. Hold on. What? But yeah, so we are completing goals, which is really, really nice. I have enjoyed doing that. And I got to read some stuff that I wouldn't read on my own, as given by my last year's reading stats. Do you have something to say to me? We'll move right into this. If you haven't checked into Here's What I Read This Month video before, I go over a lot of stats because I'm a stats girly and I like knowing this stuff. But I review all of my buying stats and all of my reading stats. So that'll be exciting to do. So let's start with the buying stats first. I, hold for applause, I, for the first time ever, did not spend any money on any new books this month. Just on Audible and Kindle subscriptions. So the total amount I spent was $27.82. How did I not spend books, you might ask? Well, I use the library. I use the Libby app constantly. Almost everything I read, with the exception of one Kindle Unlimited book. So I read 18 books this month. 18, 17? I finished 17, but I read 18. 17 of those books that were from Libby. So they were either audiobooks from there or ebooks. If your library card is applicable for a Libby membership, I encourage you, please go use that. It helps fund your libraries. It's also super accessible. All you need is a library card and you can like input it into the app, and it's incredible. Literally most of my reads last month were just from Libby. But yeah, I only spent $27.82 last month. First time that I haven't spent more than $50 on a book in forever. So super proud of myself on that one. And because I've started using Libby, I'm hoping that I can not have an Audible subscription after a while. But yeah, so let's get into the actual stats that I like keeping track of, which is my books read stat. Ooh, look at all those graphs. If you've been here before, you've seen those colorful graphs. We just did it again for March. So, yeah. So, like I said, I started 18 books, if that makes sense. So I started one the 31st, and I did not finish it until the 1st. So most of these stats are applicable to specifically what I read and finished. The reading stats: I finished 17 books. I read 4,996 pages the entire month. I read for 50 hours. I just barely caught my 50-hour benchmark that I set for myself. And my average reading pace was 166.5 pages per hour. That is significantly higher than the last 2 months because I read a bunch of graphic novels and I can fly through those. So if you're watching this video and you're like, geez, I can't do that, don't Don't compare yourself. My best day read was actually the 31st. I remember this distinctly because I was rushing to meet my 50 hours. And it's also a day I read like 4 graphic novels and finished another novel. But my best day read was 1,085 pages and 258 minutes. So I read a little bit of audiobook and then I read a bunch of graphic novels. And then I had no rereads in March. They were all brand new works. I think it's kind of putting me into slumps, picking up a bunch of new works that I don't know if I will or won't like. So I think I'm gonna pick something from my shelf this month, just to get my brain thinking again. A lot of the books I really enjoyed in 2023 are now hitting their it's been a year since I've read them mark. So I do kind of want to reread some of the ones I really enjoyed. So I don't know, maybe I'll do a reading vlog on that, we'll see. Let's get into the graphs. Ooh. Let's talk the format first. The format is, all this month was just digital and audio. A lot of times there's a physical category, but this month it was just digital and audio. I read 3 audiobooks and I read 15 digital books. The genres I read a lot of genres this month. I think there's 7 listed here, but I read 4 classics, 2 sci-fis, 4 fantasies, 1 mystery, 4 literary fictions, 1 true crime, and 2 romance books. And then the book type I read. So this is what I'm kind of talking about, like when I said I hit my yearly goal to read more types of books that are not just traditional novels. This is kind of what I'm talking about. So I read 11 fiction novels, which is kind of my wheelhouse. I read 1 nonfiction novel. I read 4 graphic novels, and I read 2 plays, which I will talk about when I recap some of my favorites and not so favorites. And then my ratings. We'll do the ratings pie graph first, and then I'll kind of talk about some highlights from March. But I rated 1 book 2.5 stars, 2 books 3 stars, 3 books 3.5 stars, 7 books 4 stars, so overall a pretty high average. 4 books 4.5 stars, and 1 book 5 stars. Yeah, my average star rating was 3.88. It's getting so dark in here. Recording in the evening was not the best idea. But, so, let's talk about some of my highlights. I'll kind of go chronologically. First book of the month that I read was Lord of the Flies, which I don't know how I've avoided. I don't think my school went, yes? She just reached up her little paw and touched my shoulder. Yes? Okay. We're taking a little cat break. Ouch. That was villainy. I know that, just caught that on camera. So, first book I read of the month was Lord of the Flies, which my school, for whatever reason, probably the pretty gruesome deaths that happened throughout it, didn't assign that as like assigned reading, so I had never read it before. I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So, not my favorite, but it is funny that you can absolutely tell it was taught by a teacher who taught boys. Like, that's kind of his whole backstory and what he was thinking when he decided to write the novel. And the way you can just tell that is super, super funny. The absolute highlight of the month, right after I finished Lord of the Flies, my 1 5-star came up. I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. My mind was blown. I also finished, the book I finished right after that was Fledgling, also by her. So first time I've ever read Octavia Butler. Wow. I wish someone had told me about her earlier. She is incredible. So I do think I'm going to pick up some of her series, because her 2 standalones were so excellent. And she's such a significant writer. Like, she is like, in my mind, she's like one of the sci-fi writers, you know? I ended up giving Fledgling a 4.5 because that's a vampire book. If you've never picked it up and you're a big fan of vampires, like I am a huge fan of vampires. I might, in October, do a vampire reading vlog where I just reread a bunch of vampire books. I don't know, let me know if you guys want that. But I'm a huge vampire fan, and Fledgling was such a unique take on vampires. I was so good. There were some sketchy parts. The reason that one doesn't get 5 stars is because there were like definitely some questionable content, but still really good. Kindred though was just incredible. Like truly one of the most interesting books I've ever read. Like period. Not even just the most interesting sci-fi, because I'm not a sci-fi reader. Just one of the really just the most interesting books. If you've never read her work, I recommend picking up Kindred. Oh my goodness, so good. And then I read the graphic novel Squire by Nadia Shammas. Really good. I thought it was so interesting, and it was very much, you could tell it was written by a Palestinian author because there were a lot of perspectives similar to like how the Palestinian people feel in general and obviously right now. I gave that one 4.5 stars. It was one of my favorite reads of the month. Honestly, 3 out of the 4 graphic novels I read like hit it out of the park. They were so good. And I will be looking for them for purchase. I read Julia by Sandra Newman, which is a retelling of 1984 from the perspective of the love interest, Julia. That genuinely made the experience of reading 1984 so much more boosted. Like I am not a huge fan of the book 1984 on its own, but once I read Julia, I was like, man, maybe I should give 1984 another chance. Because with Julia, like it just gets filled out so thoroughly. Like I think when people study 1984 in schools, I think they should now study Julia alongside of it. Like, it was that good. If you are a fan of 1984, or honestly, if you aren't a fan of 1984 but you're familiar with it, you should definitely pick up Julia because it heightens the experience so much more. My nonfiction for the month, because if you've been here, I read a classic, a nonfiction, and a translated work every month. My nonfiction was a book called Yellowbird by Sierra Crane Murdoch. It is about the story of a woman who gets out of prison and decides to solve the disappearance of a guy on her reservation because she is indigenous. So, yeah, I'm not going to go too much into it because if you are interested in it, I really recommend it. But a lot goes on, like there's so much, and I learned so much about the experience of being indigenous through reading the book. It was just, I thought it was very good. I read it as an audiobook, so it took me a little longer than it normally would have, but it's not like a scary true crime or anything like that, so I recommend picking it up if you want to learn something about Native Americans, or if you want to read like a true crime that's not too scary, definitely pick that one up. Very briefly, I read the Princess Bride book for the first time, and genuinely, the movie is just as good as the book, but the book has additional stuff. So if you love the movie Princess Bride, you should read the book. I'll say these together even though I didn't read them back to back. I read 2 plays, 2 American plays. I read The Crucible and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Plays, in my mind, so much have to be performed. I gave them 3 stars because reading them is kind of like not really for me, but the contents of the shows were actually very interesting, and I would really like to see them be performed. My translated work was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. It is translated from Italian. There is 4 books in this series just chronicling this girl and her best friend, like, as they grow up. So I think I might pick up the 2nd book. I ended up giving My Brilliant Friend 4 stars because I think the translation of it was incredible. If the translation was conveying even half of what was written in the original Italian, you know it's good. So, you all know how big of a fan I am of Alice Oseman. Her books literally rewrite my brain chemistry. I adore them. I think they are so good. But I had never read her claim to fame. I had never read Heartstopper. So, I read the first 2 volumes. I got them from Libby, so I haven't read the 3rd yet because it hasn't, like, shown up. on my holds yet, but I read the first two, and they were the first like romances in a while that had me like giggling and kicking my feet. Oh my goodness, they're so cute, and they're such easy reads. If you, like me, are in one of the very few people who still haven't read Heartstopper, take the time to do that. It's so cute. And I am always a big fan of Alice Oseman's writing. I love the way that she writes. One of my favorite books of all time is her book Loveless, so there's an additional recommendation if you are interested in that. That is pretty much all I read this month, all of the highlights of what I read. So best book, my 1 5-star book of the month goes to Kindred. Kindred is going up among some bell hooks and next to Crying in H Mart, so we will see how that goes. Oh, you're back. Here she is. Here she is, everyone. Anyway, not as successful of a reading month. I do candidly want to say I think I'm hitting a reading slump, rapidly approaching. So that's why I think I'm going to take some time this month to reread some of my faves. Just so... Yes? Okay. I am going to take some time to reread some like favorite books just to like get myself out of a slump. Thank you all so much for joining me on this very rambly chat about how my reading was in March. What did you guys read in March? Tell me some things that you really were just super fast-paced fun reads, so I can help pull myself out of this slump. If you guys liked this video, please like and comment and subscribe if you like a lot of my content. If you're already subscribed and you want to be notified when I post, you can hit that little bell button right next to, that's the wrong side, wherever it is. But you can hit that little bell button and that will notify you when I do post. I post shorts 5-ish days a week, and I post a full-length video every Sunday. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok before it's banned in the US, I guess. It's raining right now, so don't forget your umbrellas. Make sure you're getting out of your winter blues if you're near where I am, and go support your local library. Alright, I will see you all later. Goodbye!